The coaches poll came out yesterday. It's important to note, these are preseason rankings. These are not the coaches across college football that make up this poll telling you we think this team wins the national. That's not what they're saying. They're saying as we sit here today, this is where we would rank these teams. I also think it's important to note that we're not ranking these teams, I have to believe we're the coaches, based so much on potential. Like, I'm sure that factors in a little bit, but this is more so where they sit today. What do we know? College football sickos, man, it's our time. I told y'all already. Want y'all subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Whether you're a Georgia fan, whether you're a Florida State fan, whether you're a Nebraska fan, Ohio State fan, whatever you are, however you consume college football, if you're a sicko like us watching College Game Day or Big Noon all the way through the end of the game that finishes with Hawaii and whoever else, want y'all dialed in to this platform, the On3 YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you so much in advance for that. And so we look at this top 25 here. I wanted to start with this top four. Take a look at this top four. You got Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2, Texas at 3, Oregon at 4. To me, objectively, whether you have Ohio State at 1 and Georgia at 2, or you put Texas at 2 and Ohio State at 3, however you were to slice that top four, I think that is objectively the right four. You have the best combo of head coach, quarterback, roster depth. Like, if something bad were to happen, God forbid, to any of those teams, those are the most disaster-proof rosters, disaster-proof organizations, in my opinion. We did a segment on that as well previously, so go check that out. But that's how we feel about that top four. I don't have any major issue with it. I'm cool with it. Roll party roll, top four. I'm fine with that. Now, 5 through 10 gets a little bit more intriguing. Bama, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, and Florida State. At face value, I'm not going to cry over the top 10 in the coaches poll right now. It's August. We're not going to be too beat up about how they put these teams together in the preseason. I will say this, though. If there was something I was going to cry about, if there was something that was going to get me a little bit riled up, man, how is Utah not a top 10 team? Right? I mean, I understand, hey, they didn't have the year they usually have a season to go, but why is that? Because they didn't have arguably their two best players a part of that roster in Keithy and Cam Rising. They're both back. You bring back 70% production from last year's defense and only allowed 20 points a game. Did we forget who Kyle Whittingham is? I love Utah. To have them at 13, that's fine. I mean, do what you want to do. It's your poll. I'm not here to tell you how to run your poll, but I would say I would put them in the top 10. So maybe I am here to run your poll. Penn State, I could see them outside the top 10. I'm not going to die on that hill, but if I had to swap a team out, I'd put Utah over Penn State. Just my opinion. 11 through 15, you got Missouri, LSU, Utah, which I've already established I have a gripe with. Clemson at 14 and Tennessee at 15. I'd probably put Miami in the top 15. One, the roster is already top 15 caliber, if you're asking me. Second, they beat a team within that top 15, right? I mean, I love Dabo. I think Clemson, the way they do things is admirable. I'm a big fan of the way that they operate from a cultural standpoint. But they beat Clemson last year with a lesser quality of quarterback than they're going to have this year. Put Miami in the top 15. Again, I'm not going to be overly emotional about this whole thing because it's just the preseason, but I think that Miami belongs in that top 15. Not saying Clemson doesn't, but I do think I'd put Miami ahead of them. Was encouraged to see Tennessee at 15. You say, well, JD, I thought this wasn't a projection. I thought we were just trying to, keep it all about what they have currently on the roster and what we know about them right now. We don't know about Nico. We think we know about Nico. We know how talented he is. We know what he was as a high school recruit, being a 5-star kind of cat, but we don't know about Nico. Even if Nico walks out there and is mid.com, which again, I don't think he will be, but even if that's the case, Tennessee, I believe, is still a top 15 outfit. Defensively, I like the roster. I love James Pierce. I like what they have at linebacker. Secondary, we'll see, but the way they've built on defense is admirable. And then offensively, Josh Heupel running the show, all the plethora of pass catchers they have that will be good for whoever's playing quarterback, like Tennessee, top 15 outfit, encouraged to see that. 16 through 20, you got Oklahoma, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Miami, and A&M. I've already expressed I'd put Miami higher, but it is what it is. I think A&M being in the top 20 think that's probably a fair place to put them. To me, with these coaches putting A&M at 20, guys who actually are involved and ingrained and integrated into this sport at the most grassroots, boots on the ground level, that should speak to the talent that A&M has had and currently has on the roster. Because I think there's this thought that everybody that was worth their salt at A&M is transferred out. I don't think that's the case. I think they still have a lot of dudes that can play football at a high level, that will play at a high level for A&M this year. A&M at 20, I think, should be just something to take note of. Maybe not to write home about, just something to take note of. Take a sticky note, put it in your pocket, and save it for a rainy day. Now, Oklahoma's at 16. We thought about doing this segment today. We're going to do it tomorrow. Little just one-on-one with the good folks out there in Norman and kind of just a heart-to-heart. I have no problem with Oklahoma at 16. Like we did our prediction for them for their final record, and my mentions are still on fire, so shouts to the passion out there in Norman. But I'm not down on OU. The schedule is brutal, and there's question marks on the offensive line with who they're replacing. There is wait and see at quarterback, but I'm not telling you Oklahoma's not still a really freaking good football team. Brent Venables does defense. Period. Mic drop the end. Like Brent Venables, if he is in charge of your defense, you're in good shape. Leadership back there with Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman. If Jackson Arnold's a 5-star caliber quarterback this year at the collegiate level, Oklahoma's going to be like 8, 9, maybe 10-win football team. The schedule is brutal. I want to see what he is. I want to see what the offensive line is. I'm not changing my prediction now. I'm not backtracking anything. But when we talk about Oklahoma, like if it's purely a preseason ranking perspective, this is about where I had Oklahoma too. If you go back and check our post-spring, post-portal rankings, we'll do our own top 25 again before the season gets rolling, probably after fall camp. But I'm not down on Oklahoma at all. I think 16 is about the right spot for them. And we'll see what Jackson Arnold is and what he ends up being for them against this schedule. That could be a top 15 team, maybe top 10 team, no question about it. So a lot of boom potential, no pun intended, for the folks at Oklahoma. Schedule's just brutal. We'll see what they are. 21 through 25, you got Arizona, NC State, USC, Kansas, and Iowa. And look at Kansas. So inspirational, man. Lance Leipold and co. I said this once. I'll say it again. 2 words. Football school. Football school. That's Kansas right now, and I love everything about it. I love that they have developed a little bit of a toughness to them. Both them and Arizona now, I think they could win the whole darn thing in that conference. They could both win the Big 12 and be in the college football playoff. Think about where Kansas was to where they could be this upcoming season. Kansas used to be like the archetype for a laughing stock of college football. Not anymore. Rock, chalk, Jayhawk, baby. I love seeing Kansas in the top 25. We had them in our top 25 as well. We will have them in the post-spring or in the post-fall camp top 25, barring something catastrophic. If Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, all bets are off with Kansas. I'll leave it at that. USC at 23, I think is fine. I appreciate them right around this range. The question mark is, what is Miller Moss and what's the defense, which are 2 pretty sizable question marks. There's some benefit of the doubt you give Lincoln Riley for the offense side of the football. That's extremely fair. But I don't have really any major issues with this top 25. Now, strictly off of their roster, I think you could make an argument for a couple other teams here. I think Virginia Tech, with the way they finished last year, you hear me say it a lot if you watch this show, man. They won 5 of their last 7, and they have the number 1 returning production in all of college football on that roster. I love Vatek. I do, man. I think it would be good for college football to see a return of the Hokie, right? Not Return of the Jedi. Those shouts to Star Wars. It would be Return of the Hokie. I'd be a big fan of that. You could talk your way into them being a top 25 team preseason, all right? Nebraska, we're getting some pushback. I already feel it. We put them in our preseason top 25, our post-spring top 25, rather. What they have coming back, we know a lot about. 5 games, lost by 1 score. Now, you still lost the game. I'm not here to sugarcoat that, but I do think when you talk about teams going into this upcoming season, Nebraska is as capable as any in that top 25 that they have right now, or in that 20 through 25 range when you talk about the coaches poll. Last team here, and I want to make sure I preface this as much as I can because I know that as soon as we say it, the mentions, the comments, everything will be on fire, and it'll be just anarchy. So I want to preface it very, very carefully. I would not put this team in the top 25 today. I wouldn't do it. However, if you are strictly looking at talent level, I'm going to regret saying this, I would put Florida in that top 25, strictly based on talent. I'm not telling you that today they should be a top 25 team. Do not go to the comment section and say that. I'm telling you, you can make the argument they are a top 25 team from a roster talent level. All right? So, coaches poll overall, give it a B+. I think it's pretty solid. There's no there's nothing that would cause you to light this list on fire and say, ha, forget that list, at least for us. But coaches poll, solid. It's preseason. We got ball to be played. It's going to be a lot of fun. Lock in with us, man. Lock in with us. It's about that time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.